it's a fraught time because one, where we currently are, that we're still trying to negotiate the release of the female and children hostages in exchange for the ceasefire and the Palestinian prisoners. But second, because of what comes next. And there already seems to be some tensions building because of that, because next there'll be the negotiating for the men, and odds are good that that's going to get even more complicated.
Just how crucial is the role of the intermediary in this situation, which is the Qatari government? They've been heavily involved as a mediator and also as a spokesperson country, really announcing what's happening with the negotiations. What's been their role?
Well, it's an interesting role in terms of negotiations, because in general, we would much rather have the negotiations between the negotiator and the hostage takers themselves. In this case, that was not to be. And so there's this intermediary party that might not be ideal, but was acceptable. And so that's important to note, that it was acceptable to both sides. And there could be some sense of cooler heads prevailing, if you will. Because that's really what we're about in negotiations. We want to diffuse the emotions. We want to restore calm so that we can increase judgment and eventually get to a safe release of the hostages.
Just on the hostages, we've seen many of those people released, guarded through a big crowd into buses and taken to finally meet their families after almost 50 days. The looks on their faces, often they seem quite shocked, sometimes quite calm. What sort of trauma will they be dealing with now, Nancy?
It's extraordinary. I mean, we need to remember Hamas is a terrorist organization. This event took place on October 7th. It was a brutal terrorist attack, and then hundreds of people taken hostage. So they have endured trauma after trauma after trauma. And as such, there's going to be a mixture of psychological reactions. There will be the shock that we actually got out and we're alive. And there will be a form of psychological numbing, which was probably part of how they survived. And there will be the joy that they're out. And then there will be the survivor guilt of the people who didn't make it or the people who are still being held. So these folks are going to be on an emotional roller coaster that really is quite intense for some time. So they need to have calm, compassionate professionals around them, to be supported by their loving family and friends, and also just to have time to decompress, if you will.
Absolutely. Dr Nancy Zarse, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.